Okay, good to go. 2 secs, everybody. Let me just start the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Moment of truth. Could I see some thumbs up if you can see my screen? Lovely, thank you. Great to see everyone. Croeso, welcome. Thank you for giving up your time to come today. My name is James Graham. I'm delivery manager at CDPS, and I'm working with the team on streamlining Welsh Benefits. I'll just fire through this presentation. Our service designer, there's 2 work streams, which I'll just talk about now. Our service designer on the second work stream is having some tech issues, so he might not be able to join, but if he does, there'll be more to this presentation. So just to recap, people who aren't aware or new to the project, there's 2 work streams for this. There's understanding how marginalised people in Wales experience the benefit system, find out what stops them from getting the support they should have, and learn about how they're using the 3 Welsh benefits that are in scope with this project, which is free school meals, schools essential grant, and council tax reduction. That's a user research work stream, and there's a service design work stream, which is testing a streamlined user experience concept with Welsh councils, check if it's feasible, viable and desirable, and build support from councils to help it grow. Just to recap the user research side, that we started with the how might we statement. I'm going to have to move through this fairly quickly because we have covered it in other show and tells, but I wanted to give new people the respect of just catching them up. So the statement was, how might we make it easier for marginalised people in Wales to find access and receive the benefits they're entitled to? So the research objective was to understand how marginalised people in Wales experience the benefit system, find out what prevents them from getting the support they're entitled to, and learn how they're using the 3 Welsh benefits, which I've already covered. So our target outcomes: to provide detailed analysis of how vulnerable people currently experience the Welsh benefit system, develop recommendations to make Welsh benefits more accessible, efficient and supportive, and to build on existing insights by deepening our understanding of the real-life challenges people face when accessing support. So we have drafted the report, and we're just finalising the recommendations in the next couple of weeks here. So we hope to have that distributed. So there's a light touch report, which is very similar to what I'm presenting today, and there's a 38-page detailed report with our methodology, our analysis, and a lot more detail and data. So you can pick and choose based on your level of detail that you wish to have. So just a recap of the numbers. So we wanted to target 5 per. So these are the different types of marginalised groups. So you've got carers, disabled people, people from minority ethnic backgrounds, people with no recourse to public funds, and single parents. So our target was 5 per group. We actually did hit this, but we've categorised them based on the main group that we think they're part of. And there was a lot of intersectionality between them. So there could have been someone from a minority ethnic background who was a single parent, for example. So there's a lot of ground covered. In total, 31 people were interviewed, and then another 10 proxy users as well. A proxy user might be a third sector, a charity, or somebody who has extensive knowledge of the area or the landscape that we've interviewed, instead of the participants themselves. It's important to point out these figures are based on the marginalised group that these people are primarily identified with. So moving on, so how did we do it, right? So we start with our desk research, so trying to find out the gaps in our knowledge, how much is already existing and out there. Again, this was covered in a bit more detail last week, and the report will flesh this out more as well. 2 secs. So we did outreach as well. So we needed the support of the public sector and third sector. So we reached out to 35 relevant organisations and had follow-up with 19 more of these organisations, and they were key in helping us to achieve our goals and recruit the right people. Some even allowed us to conduct research on their premises. So just want to say thank you again. We can't do this without your support, and it's invaluable. So thank you so much. Then we've got to go and recruit the users, and we've got to get our ethics right and correct as well. There's a very, very stringent process here at CDPS about how we do that. So we have to all different types of channels we have to go down. So existing contacts from previous benefits and accessibility research, sign-up forms, which we share with organisations. We put physical flyers in high traffic areas like Cardiff Central Library, Hub, Job Centre and Financial Advice Centre. And, a few organisations helped us recruit directly as well. So a lot going on. We conducted in-person research as well, where we went and did pop-up research in the Central Library Hub and Cardiff Council supported housing location. And then remote user interviews, obviously online, and proxy user interviews with those organisations as well. So key now is what this show and tell is really covering is the findings from the user research. And I just want to caveat that our two user researchers are both on annual leave this week, and they worked really, really hard on this, Tom and Sarah. So I just wanted to name check on here, and they're better placed to answering the more detailed questions, but I'll try my best. And if any questions come up later that I can't answer, I will get back to you. So I just wanted to say that off the bat. So to go on to findings, people lack awareness of benefits they're entitled to. They lack understanding of benefits and who is eligible. A lot of people just really didn't know even where they come from, if they were involved central, it wasn't top of their priority list. Not all benefit application forms are accessible, like this come up a lot. And the complexity of benefits, so I'm just gonna try and get rid of that window. The complexity of benefits application forms are a barrier to applying, and people need support to be able to apply for the benefits. So, the quotes here are key. This is people's lived experience, right? So, and they're telling us it's just not worth it to apply for a couple of quid. They'll just struggle on. It'd be so much more simple if there was a one-stop shop for benefits. And we've anonymized the participants, of course. There are emotional and social challenges as well. So when people interact with the benefit system, they're often going through traumatic life events. Some people feel fear and distrust towards the benefit system, like it's purposely difficult for them. Stigma is an issue that stops people applying and impacts well-being as well. And people's attitudes towards government, local authorities, and the benefit system very polarized. So one person here said the whole thing is just awful and degrading, and it makes you think, is your life worth living? Pretty hard to hear that kind of. Just very hard to hear. Degrading or degradation was a word that came up frequently as well, so very powerful emotive. Organizational coordination and communication issues as well, so disjointed processes between and within organizations involved in delivering benefits causes challenges for the user. People need more reliable channels of communication with public sector organizations. So just the worrying disparity in the ways benefits are administered across local authorities. People felt very different from authority to authority. And the financial impact and employment barriers. People receiving benefits experience financial barriers to getting back into employment, and they fear their benefits being taken away from them for getting a job. They become financially dependent on them, but also really grateful for the positive impact that benefits have. They help you lead a better quality of life. So the three benefits in scope. So most people are aware of free school meals. Not everyone understands the difference between free school meals and eligible free school meals. There's stigma around the impact, those who need it. While most find the application straightforward, some struggle to apply and need support with their application, and some users feel that free school meals is not flexible enough to meet everyone's needs. We get lots of calls asking if we can help claim free school meals. We don't really know the extent of the problem because not a huge amount of accurate data around how much support, but it seemed like in our user research, certainly anecdotally at least, that a lot of support was needed to apply. So schools essential grants, most people are unaware of SEG, including those who are eligible. A lot of confusion around the naming of the benefit. Proxy users feel more targeted promotion of SEG could help raise awareness. The guidance of eligibility criteria around SEG is not clear. Some users find the application process straightforward. So there's a quote here, so you just think of the streamlined process where if you're eligible for universal credit, you're just given free school meals and essential grants, which sort of ties into the work that we're doing. And and then council tax reduction. So people just aren't aware of it. And the quote here is, if someone missed out on 6 years because they just didn't know it existed. Many people have to be signposted to it. Many people find it confusing. Confusion around council tax reduction can land people in debt. Those receiving universal credit have a better experience of it, and the full application can be onerous and challenging. So, right, so I'm going to stop there, and just because there's 2 work streams, I'm going to kind of give 5 minutes with a hard deadline here of questions. There will be more. There'll be another section at the end for Q&A as well. So I know I've gone through that quickly. Apologies. Just given the time constraints, trying to be efficient. But please, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, it looks like I can't see the chat. Okay, so it looks like, sorry, Ed, do you want to jump in there? Or
nothing in chat, James.
All right, thank you. Okay, so it looks like Adam, our service designer, has been able to jump on the call. Adam, are you there? Can you hear me?
I am, yeah.
So without further ado, I'll hand over to Adam. Adam, if you want me to move the slides for you, just please let me know.
Yeah, thanks, James. Appreciate it. So quick recap of how we got to where we are now. So earlier in the year, we created a concept for a streamlined application process for the 3 in-scope benefits. This consisted of 2 journeys. One was for those who are in the Universal Credit Data Share, and this was a mainly automated process from the perspective of the applicant. They had to do very little, and that was the whole purpose of that, to basically give people the benefits they were eligible for. And journey 2 was for those people who have to apply directly to the council. There will always be people who are going to need to apply, and so making this as simple as possible still remains a priority, even as we make more and more use of data to automate this process. We tested this concept with users and it tested positively, but we hadn't tested it with councils. And what we've done previously on this phase of work is tested it with councils. Journey 1 tested well, with many councils already doing many of the things that the journey consists of, and we're open-minded about adopting some of the other features that they aren't currently doing. But Journey 2 had some problems, and it relied on the idea that if councils can use Universal Credit Share to automatically process council tax reduction claims for people, could they not do the same thing with Searchlight, which is DWP's customer information database? Because we thought it should perhaps contain the same information. It turns out it doesn't surface the same information, and some key information is missing, which meant that Journey 2 didn't test so well with councils. Next slide, please. So we were still keen to keep a focus on the idea of a single simplified application form. As we've heard from the research with marginalised groups, this is something of a priority for people. Something that makes it as simple as possible, and there's one place to go. And we remained optimistic that even though Searchlight doesn't contain some critical information, we could still further simplify the application for many groups of people. And in order to do this, we needed to understand what data a single form must collect. So Searchlight doesn't provide everything we need. So what's missing, for example? How does this vary depending on a person's circumstances? So people with different circumstances claiming different other benefits, etc., would need to give different amounts of information. And on that basis, how could we sequence and branch the questions of a single application form so that each individual only had to answer the minimum questions possible, and those questions that were relevant to them? And that turns into quite a complicated problem. So in order to test the feasibility of doing this, we wanted to create a prototype to see whether it would work. Next slide, please. So the form criteria we were trying to hit when we were trying to design this form was, one, that it needed to be more simple than the existing application forms for council tax reduction and those where they are combined with free school meals and the school essentials grant for the majority of people who are going to apply. which is going to be people who are on pension credit and universal credit. And in the case of free school meals, there'll be a small number of people who are receiving asylum support. As I've said, we want to minimise the information requested. So each person only answers the questions relevant to them that they absolutely must do based on their circumstances. It was important that we didn't make the form more complicated for people who are only applying for one benefit. Councils object in many cases to the idea of a single application form, in that they fear that it will make someone applying for free school meals, for example, which at the moment is a straightforward process, relatively speaking, could become much more complicated if it's put together with applying for council tax reduction as well. We wanted to be able to screen out people who aren't eligible for what they're trying to apply for before they shared personal information. So they didn't walk away feeling like, oh, I've shared personal information and I didn't need to and I wasn't eligible. And as we've heard from the research, many people don't understand what they're eligible for. So we wanted the form to be able to support those people and guide them to those benefits that they are eligible for. And finally, that sort of a fly in the ointment was that nearly all council tax reduction forms that we've seen also are combined with an application for housing benefits. And so we needed to retain support for housing benefits as well. Next slide, please. So we have prototyped what we think is a solution to this. And I'd like to do a short demo for 1 or 2 cohorts to show you how it might work. So James, if you stop sharing and I'll share my screen instead. I'm going to share my entire screen, which means you might momentarily see your own faces, but I'll make that brief.
I appreciate that, Adam.
Right, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. So we're going to show you some sort of skeleton personas, which are based on characteristics of people that we believe would be out there who would be realistically applying. So this is Bronwyn. She is receiving universal credit and PIP. She lives with her 2 children and her adult sister. She's recently stopped working due to severe long-term health conditions. She has no other income other than her benefits, and she wants to apply for council tax reduction, free school meals, and the school essentials grant. So this is a fairly typical applicant. And what I want to stress when I show you this form is none of this form has been fudged. So this is a real form built in a simple off-the-peg form building application. So the logic actually works. It's not being fudged in any way. So on that basis, it's very basic looking, but in order to prove the concept, we think it does the job. So Bronwyn would start. The first option she has is whether she's applying for herself or on behalf of somebody else. This is useful for obvious reasons for people who can't apply for themselves, but she's applying for herself. And it asks, what is she applying for? So in this case, she's applying for council tax reduction, free school meals, and the school essentials grant. It then asks, which of these 3 benefits has she paid, if any of them? What this does is allows us to branch off and do a more complicated application process for those who aren't receiving any of these 3 benefits, because they would need to provide more information to a council, because the council will have less information about them available to them. But in this case, she's receiving universal credit. And the first thing we check is she's applying for free school meals. Is she eligible for this? And there's some simple checks for this. And there's an income threshold. So in this case, she has no other income other than her benefits. So she clearly knows, yes, my income is less than this. So now she puts in her date of birth. I'm going to put this in because it will give me an error otherwise. Her personal details, her contact details. We have here some preferences about how she could be contacted about the application as well. And then based on the postcode she put in on the previous screen, it's selected her, given her some addresses to choose from. So she lives at number 1. Do you have a disability or long-term health condition? So it's asking her this for a number of reasons, but the primary one here is that if she does, which she does, she's not registered severely sight impaired, because she's claiming personal independence payment and she has the daily living component, she doesn't have to explain the fact that she lives with her adult sister, because the non-dependents who live with her are disregarded due to the fact she receives this benefit. So now she doesn't have to give any details about her non-dependents. She can go straight on to giving the details of her children. So she puts in the details of her first child. Does he go to school? Yes, he does. It's automated to the area in which Bronwyn lives, which in this case is the Vale of Glamorgan. The reason we're doing this is we would like to press for a way to make it so that if Alex goes to school across the border in Cardiff, for example, she doesn't have to reapply to Cardiff directly, but instead is able to give consent for the Vale of Glamorgan to share her application with Cardiff. So she clicks yes, because it's a no-brainer for her. Then she chooses the school that Alex goes to, and she would normally add another child. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to move on. She puts in the bank details, which are required to pay the school essentials grant. And then she's asked about her universal credit. And so what this tells us to do is to refer to her universal credit award statement, which she would have to hand, and asks her for the details. So she'd put in these details here. In this case, she does have additional elements added because she has limited capability to work and she has children, but she doesn't have any deductions. So she puts in the extra amounts that she receives for her children and her limited capability for work. And then she receives a summary of the answers she's given, which is truncated here for the purpose of this demonstration. And then we click submit, and that would be her application done. So she's applied for council tax reduction and free school meals. And that is significantly more simple than many of the existing application processes, which would have upward of 60 to 70 questions to reach the same outcome. So time permitting, I'd like to do another one just to show how it would handle a slightly more complicated situation. We're not got much time, so I'm not going to do Margaret, but I'm going to do Gareth.
Adam, before
Yes.
you do that, Glyn has a question, so it might be good to answer it here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Glyn.
hi Adam. Thanks. Really good demo. The bit where you asked them about their income and whether it's below the threshold, you sort of said there's a number of ways you could do this, but that always feels like the one where people don't really understand what that question means in terms of overall income and so on.
Yes.
And it felt like it was very simplified there. So how do we help people understand what that means in terms of household or personal income and where they can find that information?
Yeah, that's a really good shout. If I may, I'll explain when I work through the next one, and we'll go to the same question.
Sure.
Will we go to the same question? No, we don't on the next one. Yeah, so the way I've phrased it here is people tend to, in my mind, people tend to either know, yes, I definitely am over that. I earn £36,000 a year or whatever, or I'm definitely under that. I have no income. I just receive benefits. And then those who aren't quite sure, there's an option saying, check for me. And what this does is it will still ask them for the details of their children, which is not an onerous burden on them to put that information in. And then the council can check in the eligibility checking service to see whether they are eligible or not. And that allows the council to also potentially use their discretion where that is permitted as well.
Okay. I didn't get a sense of that coming across on the form, but I'm sure you'll make it clear to people. Yeah, no, thanks. That's really helpful.
Okay, yeah. So the important thing about Gareth is that he has a number of non-dependents working with him as well as children, etc., and he doesn't know what he's eligible for. So let's have a new form. So he's applying for himself. He doesn't know, so he clicks any of the above that I'm eligible for. And what this will do is try and screen him for all of the four benefits in this case that he may be eligible for. So yes, I'm paid one of these because he has universal credit. And for free school meals and the school essentials grant, the easiest thing is, do you have children in school? Yes, he does. So this goes back to the question you were asking, Glyn. So in this case, you see, I'm not sure, check for me would be the option where people who aren't sure would go for. In this case,
sorry, I'd forgotten that. Yeah, thanks.
No problem. So in this case, he knows he earns about £900 a month with his part-time job. So he knows that he is, in fact, his income is more than this. He puts in his details. Do you rent your home? Yes, he does. He rents privately. He does not live in supported shelter or temporary housing. So here we've screened him out of eligibility for housing benefit. He puts in his personal details, puts in his contact details. He lives on the same street, ironically, as Bronwyn. He has no disabilities or long-term health conditions. So he will have to talk about the other adults in his house. So yes, he lives with a partner, an adult relative or friend, of which there are 2. And then we need to ask him about his non-dependence. So he puts in his sister's details. She does indeed work 16 hours or more a week. And that's paid yearly. She's not a student. She's not receiving one of these benefits, and she's not severely sight impaired. She's not the main carer for a child, but she is married to her husband, Peter, who also lives in the house. And this is asked because there'd be a deduction for a married couple who are the non-dependents. And then we go around the circuit again and we do adult 2. The limitations of this form mean that Peter will have the same answers as Catherine had, but that's okay. Can speed us up. So it would ask the same questions about Peter. And then we'd be on to the Universal Credit Award Statement. So it would be again, get your Universal Credit Award Statement out. You can fill in the details here. He has additional elements. He does have deductions. And so he has to give details of those 2 things. So we put in his added amounts for the children. There may be a housing element here. The money taken off. And then he'd reach the summary, submit. And this page is a bit messy, but what it does is it explains to him the workings. Because he didn't know what he was eligible for, it explains to him why he's not eligible for housing benefit, why he's not eligible for free school meals or the school essentials grant, but that happily he can apply for council tax reduction, for which he submits his application. So I'm going to stop there because we're out of time. And if for those who are happy to stay for a few minutes, I'm happy to take any questions or comments or have any discussion.
Question from Sam.
Yeah,
Sam,
hi. Yeah, I'm Sam Files from Policy and Practice. Just looking at the first example that you gave, which was someone that was claiming universal credit but not claiming council tax support. And I think you said that the council would be aware of some of the information about him from the universal credit data share. But with the way that the universal credit data share is at the moment, councils can only see the people that are claiming council tax support, otherwise they don't receive that information. That is due to change next year at some point from some work that lots of organisations, including ourselves, have done. But at the moment, the council wouldn't know that additional information. They wouldn't know anything about that person because they're not claiming that support already.
Sam, so the information I've had is that because he's claiming universal credit, he will have a record in DWP Searchlight, which contains a large amount of information about him. He's not in the universal credit data share because some people aren't, because they don't tick the right box. Okay, so he's not in the data share, but he is in Searchlight. And in fact, the only thing that's missing in Searchlight that prevents people from the council from being able to assess him for council tax reduction is the detailed breakdown of his universal credit, which is why the form asks him to fill that information out. But they do have the other information available. So the stuff they don't have is stuff about independence, non-dependent, sorry, stuff about disabilities and health conditions, and stuff about the detailed breakdown. So this form asks for that information because that's missing from Searchlight. But everything else they need, as I understand it, or as I've been told, is available in Searchlight.
Right, so it would still be another manual process afterwards for them to confirm that information. Sorry, I'd missed that bit. Apologies.
No, it's absolutely fine. So what would happen is, at the moment, the way councils are working, and I'm sure you know this, is that they will take an application and they will check the details correspond with what's in Searchlight. What we're proposing, instead of checking that they correspond, that they go to Searchlight and they pull that information from Searchlight. So it's the same level of effort. It's just a slightly different task. Anything else? And what I wanted to I did forget to talk about next steps. So what this form, the prototype, doesn't currently cover is those who are not receiving universal credit, pension credit, or asylum support. And councils have a great deal less information about other people who are still eligible but not receiving these benefits. So they would need to go through a more complicated process. We want to extend the prototype to account for that. But the most important thing is we need to test the underlying thinking of this simplified form and its feasibility in both a technical and operational perspective with councils. So if you're from a council and you're on the call and you're interested in what you've seen, please get in touch, because we'd love to talk to you and potentially test these ideas out.
Any further questions for Adam or for James? If not, we'll hand back to James to close. Nope.
Okay.
James.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. Thank you everyone for coming. We are wrapping up this phase of work. This is our last sprint now, so we'll be doing another show and tell this time in a fortnight. But if you Edwina's already shared in the chat like our contact emails, and I think our webpage as well. We can watch previous show and tells to get a full up-to-date picture of the project thus far. If you've got any questions, anything that comes to mind, please do reach out. We're more than happy to give up our time. Thank you everyone, and we'll see you at the next one.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.